Hi, this is Kristen Koltik. Thanks for watching. So this is part two of a video the first part was a video I made about the best piece of advice that I can offer you. But I wanted to get a little bit more into why that is, why that makes you powerful, and what the bigger problem is that we're actually dealing with and being called to act from a place of love. So whenever we, in the beginning of humanity, whenever we were created, we were made in the likeness of God. What does that mean? It doesn't just mean that we look like God, that man was created to look like God, but when to our core, being created in the likeness of God, God is love. And God created us so that he could show us love and be loved back. Now, human beings, to our core, being created in the likeness of God, our core desire is to love others and be loved back. That really is our core desire. But from the beginning of creation, there was an enemy who came along and wanted to destroy that purity of love. Because that purity of love and acting authentically from love towards one another is what gives us all the power, and that is God's ultimate plan. That's why it talks about in Corinthians exactly what love is supposed to look like. Now, whether or not you believe the story of Adam and Eve literally or as an allegory, it really doesn't matter. The point is that that story is included in the biblical text for a reason, and that is to illustrate something. That number one, our core essence is love. That's how we were created. That's why we were created. But that from the beginning of time, the enemy has tried to corrupt that. And what happened when the enemy came along and tempted Adam and Eve to stray from their loyalty to God and essentially their integrity and their purpose as far as why they were created, they were left with something other than love, and that is fear. They became afraid. They became afraid of one another. They were suddenly aware that they were naked. They suddenly had fear of one another. They didn't trust one another. They were no longer whole and complete as one, the way God created and designed them to be. They were afraid of each other, cautious of each other, and they were also afraid of God. They were afraid of rejection. They were afraid that they were no longer going to be good enough. They were afraid that they didn't measure up, that they were failures. All of these things that we're still dealing with today. And people refer to this as the original sin, but I think it's really just a perfect illustration of our humanness and what the problem is. This whole sort of overall dysfunction of our humanness, what we're left with when we stray from what we were created to be, from our original purpose, which was love, to be loved by God and to love God back. So I'm sorry, I'm having some problems. So ultimately, when we look around today, there's not a lot of authentic expression of love. And I mean, sure, there is between a husband and a wife and you know, within families and stuff, but there's just a lot of dysfunction. You just see a lot of broken families, a lot of dysfunctional families, a lot of you know, divorce, a lot of people who aren't even getting married. They're not even bothering to get married. People who don't even want to bother to be in a relationship. There's sort of this cynicism surrounding relationships. There's a lot of withholding of ourselves and of love, for fear of being rejected, for fear of being hurt, for fear of being brokenhearted, for fear of not measuring up. And when we look around, you can really just kind of pick any relationship, any area of your life. And if you take a close look, fear is running the show. Fear is running the show. Even as a Christian, it's just become sort of this inclination. And part of that is because we do have this primal instinct. We were gifted, with a primal instinct for survival, which is, our fight or flight response, fight, flight, or freeze. And that is part of our perfect design in order to keep ourselves physically safe. If there's a bear charging at you, that fight or flight kicks in, and you now are operating from a mode of protection. And that's normal, and that's a tremendous gift that we were given as part of the perfect design of our bodies. But what's happening now is that we're all kind of going through life perceiving everything as a threat, and living in a constant state of fear, not of necessarily physical fear, but the enemy has such a strong hold on our society that we live, all of us, in a constant state of fear of, not having enough money, or not looking good on Facebook, or not being enough for our partner, not being enough to find a partner, not being enough to get a promotion, or, being made fun of at school, whatever it is. It's a constant bombardment of stimulation that we interpret as threatening. And so essentially, we are all kind of walking around with chronic PTSD and reacting accordingly. And because we're reacting always from a place of fear, we're not free to act authentically from a place of love. And that is really the massive breakdown of our society, and not at all accidental, an absolute orchestration of the enemy, which has been put in place from the beginning of time. And of course, in our modern political climate right now, the media is playing on these fears, and we're in a constant state of thinking we're going to lose our freedoms and our liberties, and be rejected by society, or be penalized, or even killed. I mean, there's just so much fear. It's a constant threat. Our experience of life is a constant threat. And it is really disheartening. It's sort of a rabbit hole. But there's hope always in Jesus, in God. And we always have a choice. We have a choice in any given moment, in any given interaction. We have a choice whether we want to act from love or from fear. And like I said in my first video, when you choose to act from a place of love, generosity, compassion, kindness, that's really where you have all the power in the world. Not only to change your own life, to change your own relationships, but to really, stand up against the enemy, stand up against what's wrong in our society, and make a difference. Be a soldier for God, be a soldier for joy and happiness and love, and really just create a peaceful and harmonious world. So thank you so much. Take care. God bless.